I thought you knew. We live in the city. TV6 and all the info I need. Oh yeah, I thought you knew. We live in the city.
When I think about Washington, D.C., I always think about TV16. TV16, all the info I need.
Oh yeah, I thought you knew. We live in the city.
Straight from the mayor to the city council, from the Anacostia to the Lincoln Memorial. TV16, all the info I need. Oh yeah, I thought you knew.
We live in the city.
Washington Full Circle, MLK Day Parade, Health Matters, Chamber Connections, and Emancipation Day. Citizen Summit, Economic Development, HIV Symposium.
That's right, you covered it.
Reporters Roundtable, 9/11 Anthrax, Influenza Pandemic, providing just the facts, immunization curfews, and Katrina relief. If it's on in DC, it's on TV16.
TV16, all the info I need. Oh yeah, I thought you knew. We live in the city. TV16, all the info I need. Oh yeah, I thought you knew. We live in the city.
Every year, approximately 5,900 pedestrians are killed by automobiles, and 84,000 suffer non-fatal injuries.
We've had 8 pedestrian fatalities in the district so far this year, and 6 of them have been in Ward 8 alone. And one of those was at this intersection right here.
By following simple safety tips, you can protect yourself and your children.
Pedestrians need to cross the street safely. They need to go to the crosswalk. They need to wait for the pedestrian signal to go to the walk symbol. But by the same token, we want to send a message to drivers that they need to slow down and they need to yield to pedestrians.
Move that car down!
The law is that a pedestrian in a crosswalk attempting to cross the street has a right of way. Even if they're waiting on the edge of the crosswalk, you're supposed to stop for them.
That's why the D.C. Department of Transportation and the Metropolitan Police Department recently teamed up to launch a pedestrian safety enforcement campaign in Southeast.
Things that we look at anytime we have a situation like this where we've had fatalities is the engineering aspect and the enforcement aspect. And the engineering aspect we turn to DDOT, and of course we handle the enforcement aspect of it.
The enforcement took place along South Capitol Street, a high pedestrian accident zone, specifically at a heavily used crosswalk without signals, where drivers frequently failed to give pedestrians the right of way. And MPD officers were on hand to crack down, targeting drivers who failed to yield for pedestrians, speeding motorists, and pedestrians who did not obey proper crosswalk procedures.
We work with the 3 E's philosophy, which is engineering, education, and enforcement. So on the engineering side, devices such as speed humps, even though the pedestrian pylon signs that are in the middle of the crosswalk tend to slow cars down. We have rumble strips, we have roadway narrowing, we can take away lanes and make it so the drivers have to follow a car in front of them, can't whip around them and go faster. Education, we are part of Street Smart, which is a regional pedestrian, bike, and driver safety campaign. We also have a program that goes out into the schools called Street Smart for Kids, where we educate kids in the school about safe pedestrian and biking skills.
Studies have shown that a pedestrian hit by a driver traveling at 40 miles per hour has a 90% chance of dying, while a pedestrian hit by a driver traveling at 25 miles per hour has only a 15% chance of dying.
I have 2 messages. Number 1, be cognizant. You always need to be looking around to see what's in front of you, what's coming to the side of you. You have to be aware for pedestrians crossing the street, going through the crosswalk. And you also have to watch your speed, because we're noticing too many drivers are just driving too fast. And if need be, where they have to stop for a pedestrian, they're not going to be able to do it.
So remember, safety is your #1 priority, whether it's on foot or on wheels.
Let me guess, you live and work in the district and you don't own a car. And lately you've been thinking about purchasing one for those times when you actually need it, like for grocery shopping, visiting friends, or perhaps a weekend getaway. But don't spend the big bucks just yet. There's something new in the district and it's just for you. So come on, let's check it out. You've heard of time sharing. Well, there's a new trend catching on in the district, and it's called car sharing, and local residents are getting hooked.
It is the quickest, easiest way to get around DC.
What I love about this concept is that it allows 100 users to use the same parking space.
You may have seen these around town, or maybe you've noticed these. But if you haven't, here's what it's all about. Car sharing is a network of privately owned vehicles that can be rented by the hour or day. It provides the benefits of a car without the expense and hassle of owning one.
Car sharing started here about 3.5 years ago when Metro asked car sharing companies to partner with it in its transit services. Both Zipcar and FlexCar came to the district and decided that this was a good market, and they both opened for business here.
Currently in DC, we have a great transit operation. We have great rail, we have great bus, we have taxi cabs, and now we have the missing link of transportation, which is called car sharing.
We take care of everything. It's an all-inclusive rate. It includes gas, insurance, parking, maintenance, everything.
And with traffic in DC, residents really love how FlexCar and Zipcar help reduce congestion. Car sharing is extremely convenient with pickup and drop-off locations popping up in every ward of the city. Okay, so here's the skinny on how car sharing works. Step 1, log on. Step 2, choose an hourly or monthly plan that works for you. Step 3, reserve a car that fits your needs. We registered online, picked up our card, now we're in our car, we're ready to go. That's right, it's that simple. For an annual fee of roughly $25 and an hourly fee of about $8, you can have the wheels you want when you want them, just like that. So the next time you need a car temporarily, try car sharing. Remember, it's a car when you need it, where you need it. For more information, check out ddot.dc.gov/carshare.
If it's not snitching, then you make the call. Now, I've been through this before, dog. Listen, y'all gonna even end up in the casket, man, or locked up, man.
But we ain't dead yet, so I'm still getting money.
Man, listen, give me a call, man. Give me a call, man. Man, throw this in the crack.
We already know what time it is.
If you witness a crime and you report it to your local police department, that doesn't mean that you're a snitch. Let's keep peace in our community and our environment.
Is an artist's prayer. May we forever do our thing. May watermelons springing from our mouths and mountaintops easily from our fingertips. May rats uncomfortably scatter from the radius of our rhythm. Dizziness damaged promptly. Arguments interrupted with imagination. We will seek out ugly and show it us till it feels shame. This profession ain't no hiding place in a battlefield. We are honored to be an underground railroad in audio form. Does this look like shininess we'll never be able to afford? Bling bling like nothing but statistics stacked against my people. Sewage drains into a subconscious to pickpocket a future in the midst of a techno takeover by pasteurized alabaster. These notes are made from our intestines. These colors from our bloodlines. And our dance steps are just our tears in portable form. And because vicious days have gone platinum, may all our poems go ruby.
Jazz at the Arc is a festival. It is a concert series that we decided to do for the people of Washington, D.C. in general, but the people of Anacostia, east of the river.
Am I in here by myself? All right. Because you know I can't see y'all. I just need to feel y'all, all right? Don't be shy. I know y'all in some nice, comfortable seats and we in a theater, but y'all know how we do, right? All right, so don't be shy.
Basically, I just called all my friends. I mean, you know, it's jazz. And I knew I didn't want to do one type of jazz. I wanted to incorporate folk jazz, which is why I called Maritri, who's a dynamic guitarist, pianist, vocalist.
You're my everything, every song I sing, every word I write, my all and all. If I could find the words to say that I love you, if I could find the words to say that I can hear your voice, it's all around me. I can feel your presence, it's everywhere, everywhere, everywhere.
I wanted some soul funk jazz, which is why I called Fertile Ground.
Because the music is the essence of my breath. Now let the wind blow.
And I knew I wanted some world jazz, and so I called Vince. So we wanted like a cornucopia, if you will, of the rhythm and soul of jazz, so that there's something for everyone here.
Dang. See how you are? Got me up in this nice place acting a fool. Isn't this a beautiful facility? Isn't this great? We were talking earlier, and I was saying that, you know what? This is the kind of place that's made for us to perform and find magic, you know, where it's set up for the music and not to sell beer, you know. It's like, so no matter what you do, come back here and support this place the best you can. If it's something you don't even know what it is, sooner or later you got to trust somebody, because the radio ain't really taking care of you. So
this wonderful space, the Arc Theater, you know, it's grandiose. And it's absolutely stunning, and it's a brand new state-of-the-art theater. It presents a very classy image, and we wanted to bring that image through the artist as well as through the venue.
Oh no, there's a power so much. just keep holding on.
Just keep holding on.
Pushing for what you inspire. And I love you that will transpire. Hey, a lovely day, yeah. Come on, y'all. Come on, come on. Hey, yeah, yeah, yeah.
A lovely day.
What a love, lovely day, lovely day.
It's extremely wonderful. It's even more grand than what I even imagined. It's beautiful. It's like the stage is great. The environment is wonderful. I really, really enjoyed performing here.
So you do. Right, the real talented ones, y'all can do it on just one foot. With the best of us. All right, y'all got to keep that going, right? I hear the girl manifesto, black, brown, branded, baptized as in big-bodied behemoth bouncing down the boulevard, as in I bring the beat. I be girl manifesto, as in we are bad people, spawned by them bad mama jammers, also known as your mama. I here be girl manifesto, this here be attitude. Not to be confused with a bad hair day, uncomfortable shoes, or a bra that shrunk in the dryer. This here be product of slavery, emancipation, and slavery once again. This here be product of that fire preacher, cross burner, trailblazer, freedom, and slavery once again. This time to the beat. I did not dirty my feet, strap drums to our rack, lead us through freedom, and remember how to make love just to be pimped club to death in your video. After party award show be a live satellite feed for your top 10 countdown, the remix. These hips don't shake to hip-hop. Hip-hop shakes to these hips. Earth, wind, water, fire, woman. I be the fifth element. All else be imitation. I hear me.
Why can't put? Like I think I put. I strip it up on kaboom, chicken, wicked, chicken, water, chicken. Oh, I got queen, queen, shaka, chicken, point. But sip it, boom, just sip it, boom, just sip it, boom, I'll ship. Yeah. DC are all of the people. I mean, this is Chocolate City. This is DC, and I was always surprised that for an urban center, it's very open, and they are looking forward to new and exciting things, and they welcome magic and test them and try things that normally they wouldn't hear on, let's say, a regular radio station.
Voice lights on again. Are you waiting for me? Merci beaucoup.
This is what I like to think of as east of the river, coming together with poetry, jazz music, just the arts in general.
Congress passed a bill making morals illegal, education is cheap, drugs are free. Oh God, my God, G-O-D has been banned in 32 states moving forward. As we head into the future blindfolded on roller skates, making progress. 3003. Can I get a witness?
Support the underground artists, support the independent artists, because we're trying to bring real music and true music in real life to you. And without you all, we can't. exist.
This is what keeps music alive. But we don't have venues like this where bands perform. This can definitely grow into something where you have really, really major artists and just give everyone opportunity. I know that folk who book this will be fair and they will have independent, major, whatever, children performing, whatever, but just keeping that energy alive, that sustains the people. That makes us happy.
If things go well here at the Ark, we'll be doing this on a regular basis. So make sure you come out and check out jazz at the Ark.
In 1835, the nation's capital was a city already on edge with racial tension. In August of that year, a peculiar confrontation between an 18-year-old slave named Arthur Bowen and a 60-year-old white socialite named Mrs. Anna Marie Thornton set off a series of explosive events, resulting in Washington's very first race riot.
One evening, after engaging in a debate at the 15th Street Presbyterian Church, Arthur Bowen decided to go home where he was living with Anna Marie Thornton. Was inebriated at the time and was walking into the house, and as he walked into the house he picked up an axe and put it on his arm as he was walking in. Anna Marie Thornton, Marie Bowen, who was Arthur Bowen's mother, was in the bedroom, and when he walked in he startled them. And as a result of startling them, Anna Marie Thornton rushes out of the house, and she was met by the physician of Andrew Jackson. And she shared the story of Arthur Bowen walking into the house with an axe on his arm. Then it becomes a part of an alleged attack on the mistress, Anna Marie Thornton, which created the chaos and the havoc that took place here in the District of Columbia, known as the Snow Riot of 1835 in the District of Columbia, the first riot here in the district.
The alleged attack became just one of several sparks that would soon set off an outbreak of violence in the nation's capital. Increasing rumors of a possible slave insurrection, along with deepening animosities from the city's other poor minority, helped turn the district into a city about to explode.
Once Arthur Bowen was captured and incarcerated at the D.C. jail, which was located in Judiciary Square, the Irish mechanics, who were angry because they felt that the enslaved persons were taking jobs away from them, and with the backdrop of the Nat Turner insurrection of 1831, and to avenge the alleged attack on Anna Marie Thornton, they wanted to get Arthur Bowen out of jail and then hang him. The policemen prohibited the mechanics from gaining access to Arthur Bowen. So subsequently, they marched down the street to 6th and Pennsylvania Avenue. They destroyed the restaurant of Beverly Snow because they could not gain access to Arthur Bowen. One has to realize that by 1835, the number of African Americans who were free outnumbered the number of enslaved African Americans in the district. So that played into the attitude and the behavior of the Irish mechanics. Let me just emphasize that during this period, mechanics are basically laborers in the city, general laborers in the city. And so they waged this campaign of terror on Beverly Snow as an example or as a symbol to suppress the abolitionist movement, to suppress the movement for freedom, liberation, and equality and emancipation. So therefore, Beverly Snow's restaurant becomes a symbol of their attack.
During the 1830s, Washington, D.C. had emerged as a thriving city with a population of 20,000 people. And one of its leading citizens was a lawyer by the name of Francis Scott Key, the man who penned the lyrics to the Star-Spangled Banner. Having been named the city's district attorney by President Andrew Jackson, the man who defined America as the land of the free and the home of the brave, proved to be a determined foe of freedom of speech in the city's moment of crisis. In fact, Francis Scott Key was indeed a smug advocate of white supremacy.
Francis Scott Key, as the district attorney for the District of Columbia, he thought that he should send a message to free blacks as well as those who were part of the abolitionist movement that this movement for freedom, liberation, and equality would not be tolerated by the officials of the district.
Memories were still fresh of Nat Turner's 1831 rebellion, just 180 miles south of D.C. in Southampton, Virginia. Turner and a band of runaway slaves had killed upwards of 50 white people with axes before it all came to an end. The violent and dramatic incident was now on the minds of the residents of the district, and especially those close to President Andrew Jackson.
It is interesting to look at the role of President Andrew Jackson, who was a white supremacist, in the Arthur Bowen case. After Francis Scott Key prosecuted the case, Arthur Bowen was found guilty of attempted murder on Anna Marie Thornton. Anna Marie Thornton knew and felt that Arthur Bowen truly was not trying to attack her, and she started a petition to free Arthur Bowen. Through that petition, Andrew Jackson stayed the execution 3 times. On the 3rd appeal from Anna Marie Thornton, he pardoned Arthur Bowen. And this is the role that he played in the Snow Ride of 1835, which should probably have been called the Arthur Bowen Ride rather than the Beverly Snow Ride, because it was more about Arthur Bowen than it was about Beverly Snow.
By the summer of 1836, a sense of normality had returned to the community of free blacks in Washington. The city imposed new restrictions on freed Negroes, and for now, life went on.
We, as the human race, should never suppress, never enslave, never oppress, and never treat our fellow humans indifferent. The lesson from this is that freedom, liberation, equality, and justice should be for all, and oppression and slavery for none.
In 1848, the District of Columbia was home to a combustible mix of slaves, freed blacks, pro-slavery whites, and abolitionists. It was also the setting for the single largest attempted slave escape in U.S. history, a daring and dramatic bid for freedom aboard the Pearl.
It's very hard to have any precise picture, but it is estimated that throughout the country, about 1,000 slaves per year either ran away or tried to run away. But the penalty for running away was very high, very high. Sometimes if they lived in the Upper South where life was not too hard, they were sold to New Orleans. Sometimes they were beaten viciously.
Nearly 37,000 people lived in the district at that time. About 8,000 of them were free black people, and 4,000 were slaves. Some tried to buy their freedom, others tried to run away, often by way of the Underground Railroad. William Chaplin, a radical abolitionist known for helping several slaves escape, was enlisted by a free black couple, Daniel and Mary Bell, who were trying to secure the freedom of their own children. It was the Bells who initiated the planning for the Pearl escape.
When the Bells asked him to arrange for 10, this was a very large number and very difficult. And this is why he asked a man he knew in Philadelphia to arrange for a ship, and that's how the Pearl got involved.
That Philadelphia man was Daniel Drayton, a ship's captain who once helped a family of 6 slaves escape.
Daniel Drayton himself was a Methodist who had become alienated from the Methodist Church because he felt they did not try to end slavery. He had a large family. He realized that they were in want, and for that reason, he most reluctantly accepted the $100 offered to him for bringing off the slaves. He knew how dangerous it was.
Drayton sought the help of Edmund Sayers, also a ship's captain, who owned a schooner called the Pearl. Reduced to using the Pearl for hauling and selling coal, Sayers reluctantly agreed to come to Washington because he needed the $100. Paul Edmondson, a free black man and father of another large family of slaves, was also seeking freedom for his children aboard the Pearl. Because his wife Amelia was a slave, all 14 of her children were legally slaves also, and as soon as the children reached the appropriate age, their owner rented them out.
It was because they were rented out in Washington that they heard about a ship coming to take the Bell family to freedom. And so they approached Chaplin and said, could we get on board the ship? And so they were among the people who waited with bated breath to find out whether or not they would be allowed to get on board the Pearl. When Drayton said, I'll take anybody that wants to come, the Edmondsons were among the first to get on board. That night, 76 slaves, men, women, and children, slipped down to the ship and got on board. I think so often of how desperate people were to achieve freedom. Because think of what the Pearl was like. It was a broken down old schooner. It had been hauling coal. Nobody did anything to clean it up. And yet they were grateful. They were willing, they were anxious to get on board.
So on the evening of April 15, 1848, the passengers aboard the Pearl, old and young, male and female, mothers with children, set sail on a daring 225-mile quest for freedom. But by daylight, their slave owners realized something was amiss.
They recognized the next morning, because all of the things that domestic slaves were supposed to do had not been done. They were absolutely furious.
A posse soon formed and set out in a steamboat on the Potomac to capture the runaway slaves.
When the steamboat saw the Pearl, there was much shouting and hallelujahing because they had found the ship that they were looking for.
Drayton and Sayers were taken on board the steamboat, and the Pearl was tugged back up the Potomac to Washington, where they anchored at the foot of 7th Street. But it was sisters Mary and Emily Edmondson who later would become the Pearl's most famous passengers.
As they marched up 7th Street, this is in downtown Washington, the crowd grew much larger. By this time, the crowd had grown threatening. There were cries of, "Lynch 'em, lynch 'em, the damned villains." There were taunts and jeers at every step. According to another account, people were shouting, "Drag him out, knock his damned brains out, shoot him, shoot the hellhound." One of the bystanders is supposed to have said to fugitive Emily Edmondson, "Aren't you ashamed to run away and make all this trouble for everybody?" She replied, "No, sir, we are not, and if we had to go through it again, we'd do the same thing."
The runaway slaves were returned to their owners, and most of them were sold. But it was sisters Mary and Emily Edmondson who later would become the Pearl's most famous passengers. Drayton and Sayers were put on trial.
But Drayton and Sayers couldn't find a lawyer who'd defend them. They were too dangerous. And so Horace Mann, whom almost everybody knows as the great exponent of public schools in the United States, reluctantly agreed that he would defend them.
Drayton and Sayers were found guilty of transporting slaves for the purpose of escape and sentenced to long prison terms. But a few years later, President Millard Fillmore decided to pardon Drayton and Sayers. Yet after the Pearls' capture, Mary and Emily Edmondson and 4 of their brothers were quickly shipped off to the lucrative slave market of New Orleans. The brothers were easily sold, but Mary and Emily's story didn't end there.
They were beautiful, they were young, and they had lovely singing voices. And so it was assumed that they would be sold to be fancy girls in New Orleans. But then it appeared that they were in peril of catching whatever fever it was that was killing people in New Orleans. And so they were sent back, first to Baltimore and then to Alexandria, where they hoped that somebody would buy their freedom.
Paul Edmondson campaigned tirelessly to free his daughters. He journeyed to the New York offices of the Anti-Slavery Society, seeking the help of the Reverend Henry Ward Beecher. Soon Beecher's church in Brooklyn began raising funds to purchase the girls' freedom.
They were successful in this, but the only reason I think that they were successful is because Henry Ward Beecher volunteered to be the main speaker. And he raised enough money to free Mary and Emily Edmondson.
At this time, Harriet Beecher Stowe, the famous author of Uncle Tom's Cabin, became interested in Mary and Emily Edmondson's story after a visit from the girl's mother in New York. With the support of Harriet Beecher Stowe and Reverend Beecher, the Edmondson sisters attended Oberlin College. Mary Edmondson died within a year, and a grief-stricken Emily returned to Washington. She later joined forces with famous abolitionist Frederick Douglass and campaigned tirelessly for the cause of emancipation. Like Douglass, she gained celebrity in the abolitionist movement, often in the face of imminent danger. The human drama at the center of the attempted escape on the Pearl mirrored the deepening drama of the coming Civil War.
This was a terrible thing that had happened. It was a terrible thing because it had happened right next to the capital of the United States. And consequently, people all over the South were totally enraged. And I suspect this incident was one of the reasons that the search for fugitive slaves was really tightened up in a law that was passed known as the Compromise of 1850, which made it obligatory to help people recover the slaves. Now, also a part of that law was a measure providing that the slave trade would be ended in the district. Not slavery. Slavery remained until 1862, but it was at least a recognition that there was, by this time in the United States, a growing opposition to the institution of slavery.
By law, on February 17, 2009, something will happen to your television. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. Digital TV will control the transmission. It will control the horizontal and the vertical.
It can sharpen images from a soft blur to crystal clarity. DTV will enhance all that you see and hear.
Or, if you're not prepared, your TV could go dark. Get the facts on how to stay connected. Visit oct.dc.gov.
And clear up the mystery
of DTV.